Hello, everybody. And I'm hoping you can hear me because I have a new setup going right now. Once again, I've been playing with everything, and I'm joined by Amit. So hopefully you can also hear Amit.
Hello.
And so we have sounds like everything is good. Looking at the chat, so that's good. And yeah, I'm really excited for today to be joined by Amit here. And if you don't know him, he's a CSS wizard, especially when it comes to animations and 3D and all of that
Thank you.
stuff. Do you want to just give a quick introduction about what you do?
Yeah, I can. So, thank you first of all for having me. It's exciting to be here. Yeah, I'm a front end developer specializing in CSS animation perspective. I actually started doing the animation just as a way to test the boundaries of CSS, just to check what can we do about with animations and with 3D within CSS. And it got a lot of traction, and people started to like those things. So I actually started focusing more and more, and actually found that there is a way to start using those methods in real life, in real life products, in buttons, in info cards, and so on. And yeah, so that's what I do for the last couple of years. I don't know.
Uh,
And I'm doing a lot of animations. If you ever seen my code pen or tweeted.
yeah, we should definitely. I might pull up your code pen after just to sort of blow people's minds. But um, the main focus we're here for today is to do a bit of a CSS animations AMA. So you guys can ask questions about just anything you want about CSS animations, and I'm sure if some 3D stuff sneaks in, that we'll have some answers
Yeah.
for you on that front as well. And so one thing I set up on my last stream on last Thursday, a question collector. So if people want to ask questions, sometimes it's easy to lose things in the chat. So I have a question command that you can use. Stole the idea from Alex Trost. So I think it'll work well. Just let's see. Let's make sure my scenes are working. And
Yes, I am.
so we can see there's
You
already a
just
test
talked
there.
about Alex, and he's here in the chat. Hi, Alex.
Oh, there. Hey, Alex.
And Steph is
Thanks
here.
for
Hi,
jumping in.
Steph.
So yeah, if you just do a exclamation point and Q, or write out question, and then you can do, I have a question about this in the chat, and it will save it in there, and we'll be able to see it, and I can, as we go through them, I'll knock them off, so we can keep up to date with everything that's in there, and so yeah, as you have questions, just ask them that way so we can keep track of them, because it'd be a little bit easier for us. Or if we're in the middle of explaining something and we won't have to sort of keep such a close eye on the chat, which will make life easier for us overall. So
Yeah. So maybe I actually start about a question we talked about earlier that somebody wrote in Twitter in one of your responses, just while other people asking questions in the chat. The question was, I don't have it right now in front of me. Do you remember the exact question?
it was about the future of 3D
Oh,
CSS, and sort of or not 3D CSS, but 3D on the web, and how is CSS going to be the solution, or are we always going to rely on sort of JavaScript solutions?
yeah. So the thing is this: the solution from the CSS side is already here. So all the 3D animations that you see me doing is, well, at least most of them, is with pure CSS. CSS has already have the perspective thing. It's already done. We have the transform, the positioning, everything is already done. The problem is more about the browser themselves, about the way they're rendering the 3D, the power they have to render 3D elements, and a lot of with a lot of elements, and with a lot of keyframes. So and by the way, if you worry about 3D and perspective and animations regarding performance, so yes, there is a problem if you're working with high scale animations like I do. But if you're working like if you want to do like a checkbox, like a cube checkbox, like I did, uh, that's not a problem. The browser can actually animate 3 or 6 divs. Uh, Specifically today, because now when we're using 3D with transform with 3D, the browser already know how to send it to the GPU, and not render all the mathematics itself. So as far as the future goes, again, from the CSS side, we're already there. We're already in the future. As far as the browser, from the browser side, there's still some work, but yes, we are heading in the right direction.
Yeah. So that's exciting for for me. It's always fun seeing more CSS solutions. And just for here, I'll put this in the chat too. But I said we'd maybe look at it later. But since we're talking about the 3D stuff now, here's some of the stuff that Amit has made, which is
I
this is all
remember.
just CSS and absolutely incredible. And
Thanks.
so I think it showcases sort of what we can do now. And as you said, like there can be sort of performance issues and certain things when you go with the really fancy stuff. But um,
Yeah, like I did the one with the gears. There's like 4 gears,
I
and each
remember
one
that
of them
one.
is made
Yeah.
out of hundreds of divs. So like, yeah, that would be probably slow if you want to render it on a regular website. Um, but normally, again, if you want something that is pretty basic, like info cards and so on, it's very easy to do with just CSS. And
Yeah.
this one.
That's really cool.
This one has, by the way, this is maybe something that people want to ask about. If you move the mouse, you can see that the angle is
Mhm.
also changing, and that's also with pure CSS because you can map the mouse position with CSS. Actually, I have an article about it. So if you have a question about how to map mouse position, I think we can talk about it.
Is that using like a just like a grid almost that's overlaid on the top, and then it
Well, that's the
sort of
basic
yeah.
idea. Here there is no grid, just lines,
Right.
because
Mhm.
it's only on one axis.
Mhm.
But if you want to have like in two axes, so yeah, you need like a regular grid, and then when you hover a specific cell in the grid, you transfer
Mhm.
the its location to the animation itself.
Yeah. That's really cool. So yeah, let's jump on over to the questions and
Yeah.
see what's up. And that's something else we're talking about. But first up, we have where is a good place to start learning animations?
Well, that's a good question because I had nowhere when I started learning. I actually started doing animations way back. The first animation I made, it's was in '98 when Windows 98 came out. It had the ability to have animated background, so I started learning how to make animation. That was back in I worked with Photoshop and created GIFs. But then I've worked a lot with game makers, and I made some games over the years. So I learned Construct and Unity. So I didn't actually learn animation anywhere in particular. Just as I said, it was just a way to start examining the boundaries of CSS. Uh, so I don't have like this is a very good resource. But I have seen. I think maybe the best place is to learn is to check out CodePen and Twitter and follow people that does animations, and of course streams like this one and like Alex's, and talk about and to hear people that talk about animations.
Yeah. I think yeah, and it's always seeing what other people are doing and how they're doing it. I think especially when
Yeah,
it's pushing the boundaries a little bit of what we're doing. Just gonna say I've seen a lot of first time chatters in the chat, so thanks everybody who's jumped in who hasn't been here on Twitch before. Always fun to see new
hello,
people coming in.
thank you.
Um, and Ben's here as well. Hi Ben. Got a lot of people in this morning. Thank you all for coming and joining us. I guess it's a popular topic of looking at CSS animations.
Yeah, it actually, when I started it, a lot of people ask me why there's nobody cares about it, but no, people are care about it because I do think specifically now that the virtual thing, the VR and the XR AR world, the metaverse is here, so everybody does think about 3D. 3D looks better. Things in 3D looks better. So yeah, why not do it with CSS? Why use third party libraries? You can for certain thing you need, but if you need something basic like checkboxes, yeah, make it with pure CSS or with SCSS. Same thing.
Hmm. So yeah, before we get into the chat, just going on, continuing with the idea of performance and all of that. We hear even not even talking about 3D, but just animations in general. there's some things that sort of have a bigger impact on performance than other things. I've seen some good resources that sort of break down the different parts. But I guess that, like, if you're newer to all of it, and we have when the page is, you have like the what's causing a repaint versus what's causing a reflow versus all of those things, like how much
Exactly. So you have like a re-render, repaint, reflow, or the other way around actually, reflow, repaint, render. So the better thing to do is not to add a reflow. So when we use animation, specifically with 3D, when we use transform, you're actually not asking the page to do a reflow. Just to give you an example, what a reflow, what does cause a reflow. If you have like a very simple accordion component, okay, and you click on the accordion and an item, and the item opens, you don't ask the browser just to calculate what the height of that component is. You actually ask him to push everything beneath the component down. So we need to calculate the entire flow of the page again. So if you're using a reflow, if you're using transform to translate something, you don't ask the browser to do a reflow. He just calculates that specific element. So performance wise, it's actually better to have like if you want to have a card with a read more data, and you click on the read more and it opens, performance wise, it would actually be better to click it and rotate it 180 degrees and have all the information from the backside, for example.
Yeah, just as I know, when I'm just throwing a really basic example together right now, but one thing you see a lot is dealing with heights. So and then on hover you do like a height of 10 rem or something like that. So like that's a really simple example where like the page actually has to reflow all the content because literally you're changing the flow of the document. And if you're doing a transition on that, it's doing it the entire time through, so that can slow things down as well.
Yeah, if you're doing a transition on a height and you are asking the browser to do a reflow on each and every render, that's heavy. That takes a lot of time. And the frame rate will drop if you do it. If you have a lot of elements on the page, the frame rate will drop.
Yeah. And actually, there's I forget where it is, but I've looked at it before. I've done a live on it for seeing in the DevTools. There's tools where you can actually see what's impacting what. Do you remember how to get to those?
There's a render tool in the DevTools. Maybe asking somebody like Adam would be a better place. But there's a wait, let me open it in my, because I can't really see your.
It's really small, I know.
Yeah, there's an
rendering.
animation tab right underneath it, and and right next to it there's that's the rendering.
Here, I can do this though. This is layout shifts. No, that's not the right one.
Yeah,
I know I can make this bigger. 1 second.
yeah, it's one of those. The paint. I think it's the paint flashing. Yeah, use the paint flashing.
Paint flashing's on. Anyway,
Oh,
there's
I
these
see
tools that
differently.
you can sort of go into. It's not doing it. It might be my background colors, but you can see one of these anyway. We have the layout shifts, I think, going on. But just to show that there's things you can check for. It doesn't help that I'm on an iframe right now, so that might be influencing things as well. But anyway, just a few things there to keep into mind. And just Hector, thank you very much for the bits as usual. There's a CSS grid poster from CSS-Tricks on Amit's wall. I was just looking at that yesterday. I see it. Yeah.
There's a what?
Your CSS grid poster, is it grid? I see.
Yeah, I just did like a small grid of a few of my latest animations because I wanted to promote this stream. So I did a small grid
in your background.
Oh yeah, in my background.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so this is grid, and right next to it, you can't see it right now, but there is the Flexbox one.
Nice.
I obviously got him from the wonderful guys at CodePen. They're the one. Actually, I'm pretty sure that Lynn Fisher painted it.
She's the one who did it. Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Oops, I shouldn't have switched that. I should have done this. We have a few more questions. So that first one is done. We can get rid of you. Why do we need? There's perspective, depth, and maybe these two can sort of go together a little bit.
Yeah. So why do you need perspective origin? That's actually a good question. I think the first question is the first step is to understand what perspective origin is, and maybe even further back to understand what perspective is. I actually got really deep into these topics and trying to explain it because I'm working on a workshop about that specific items, that specific topics. But the thing that you need to remember that perspective origin is not what you think, because like if I have a specific item, okay, element, and this is my perspective point, okay, because like this is the screen and this is the perspective point. So you think that if you change the perspective origin up, so it would look like that, okay, from the top. So maybe you think like the same idea is to rotate the item, but it's not actually the same thing, because when you're doing perspective origin, there is like a lens correction that corrects the position. So once you're using it's really hard to explain. I do working on a way to explain it better. I'm sorry, but the first thing that you need to remember when you're using perspective origin is that you are creating some sort of distort. You distort the image. So if you want to actually like look at an image from the top, it would be better actually to keep the origin in the center and rotate the scene. That's the reason. I think a good example, I did like an animation with jumping boxes like a week ago or 3 weeks ago, and that's exactly what I wanted to get. I wanted to get the perspective from the top, but I didn't obviously use perspective origin because it would be distorted. What I did is just rotated the scene 15 degrees, and most of the animation I do, like these days, all of the animation I do, I just wrap it in a scene component or a different component, and then I can actually rotate that scene to like imitate
Right.
the change in the perspective origin.
So would you say in general you don't use perspective origin too much? You like leaving
Mm,
it the same
These
and
days, now, no, maybe for very, very specific cases, but as a rule of thumb, no, because it does make cause the image
um,
to look a bit different than what we expect to see. Um, Actually, again, as I said, I'm the perspective itself. It's very strange for, unless you're working with it, specifically like if you come from a world of cameras, okay, from taking pictures, so you can't think of the distance from the value of the perspective like as a zoom in and a zoom out, because it's not. If you're taking the screen, the if you're putting a bigger value on the perspective, it's not that you're gonna be farther, but the image is gonna be in the same side and the same size, everything the same size, because the perspective always looks at the viewport. It doesn't look at your scene. It looks at the viewport, so the viewport always remain the same size.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then continuing what Evan asked, he also asked about just adding depth to an element.
Yeah, so and here's the thing: there is no such concept as death. Well, I think we talked about it in one of your previous videos that we made. There's no concept of death in CSS. So when you want to build a cube, for example, you can't tell it like this is the width, this is the height, this is the depth. No, you just need to take different panels that have the depth of 0 and then construct a cube. There's actually two types of constructions in 3D. One is constructive, like the cube, and the other one is layered, that you can actually add like a lot of layers, one on top of the other, and construct other shapes. And it better for round shapes or for texts, for things like that. But again, so this is like the two methods to add depth to a specific element, but you can't just say this is a depth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite things too, just is also when you're sort of faking the depth of something. Like when we did that one with the ball bouncing on the cube, and you just
Yeah.
put
So
the gradient on it to make it look like it where it was, and we had like the reverse animation, so it wasn't moving, and like
yeah. So making spheres in 3D, it's just it's a it's something. It's like a topic of itself,
Right.
and I made a lot of spheres over time with a lot of different methods. But yeah, because there's no depth, so you have to fake it. If you're doing a square, if you're doing a cube, it's very easy. You just put the different panels in all of the right places, and that's it. But faking something that is actually round, that's very difficult.
Mhm.
And again, maybe for things that are very round, like text and fonts, for example, using the layered method is actually better. If you want to have like 3D info cards with rounded borders, the layered function going to be better, probably better.
Cool. And yes, there's a lot of new people jumping in. So if anybody does have a question, we're not spending too much time looking at the chat. I have my eye on it as Amit's going. But if you just use the command, the exclamation point and question, and then you can just put a space and write in your question, or it's even exclamation point Q, write your question. It's going to save it so we can reference it after. So if you do have any questions about CSS animations or 3D stuff, whatever it is, and you want to get your question answered, that's the best way to do it. So let's see. I'm just looking if there's anything in the chat while we were doing that. But it looks like we're good. So the next one, Evan did ask where he could find your the article that you mentioned on following the mouse position.
Oh, I'm gonna send you a link. Just a second. So most of the articles that I write, I publish it in CSS-Tricks because I love to read things in CSS-Tricks. Yeah, just put it in the chat.
There it is.
I do have some articles that I've written in other blogs in other content websites, but most of the important things are in CSS-Tricks. So this is the one I did with mapping mouse position, and as you can see there, the general idea is again to just cover the whole area in with the grid, and just like this one.
Mhm.
And again, each cell has as a specific value. With a little bit of mathematics, you can add the specific x value and y value for each website. And actually, I have a couple of nice examples right there in the bottom that I use it for, for parallax scrolling and just how to manipulate certain elements. And I actually did one just for animating text, just to show that you can animate text using the mouse position. If you move, yeah, it's very similar to the typing animation I did a few
Mhm.
months later.
Mhm.
Uh, the idea is that you can animate text in the keyframes.
That's really cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, we won't dive too in, but the link to that is in the chat, and this is all like animate mouse tracking with. And actually, a lot of the time I find when you have that grid, like I remember the first time I was doing the reacting to CSS stuff, and it was the first time I saw it, and I was trying to figure it out, and eventually I was like, wait, I have a feeling it's mapped, but the grids tend to be kind of big, so like it's not always super smooth, just because like it sort of jumps from one to the next. But I don't know if you have a
Yeah,
transition on it or what, because
yeah,
this
yeah.
one
I
looks
do
so
have a
smooth.
transition on
Yeah.
it. You can't actually transition everything like the text. You can't transition
Right.
a
Yeah.
text,
Yeah.
but you can transition. Like here's the position, the x and y position that you can obviously
Mhm.
you can
Know that.
transition. And the thing is that you need to add the transition type. You need to add the ease out. Because if you add the ease or the ease in out, so the start is always gapping. So the right transition to use is the ease out transition
Mhm.
if you're already using a transition on it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Those are like those little things that I never learned. I just tried it many times, and I said, "Oh yeah, ease out. This is the right way to go."
nice. And I just saw that GraphiCart rated us with 89 people. So thank you so much, GraphiCart, for the raid. That's amazing. And
Thanks.
just as a really quick update on what we're doing, Amit's a CSS animation wizard, and he's answering our CSS animation questions. So if you have any questions about CSS animations, 3D CSS, anything like that, it's the right place to be. And if you have a question that you want to ask specifically, we're collecting them. So you can do an exclamation point question or exclamation point Q. I think Ben just threw it in there as well, so thank you. So you can do that, and it will collect your question for you, and we'll be able to answer your question. And I see a whole bunch of people that we're following, so I'm guessing that some of the raiders who just came in. So thank you very much for the follows. Appreciate that very much, and thank you very much, Graphic Art, for that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. By the way, I do see one question in the chat. What is the advantage of doing mouse detection with CSS and not JavaScript?
Mhm.
So, first of all, normally, like if you use it in some cases, maybe JavaScript is the right way to use it, but in some cases you don't have JavaScript. Some browsers and some people actually block it, and if you're using like a very small segment, because if you're using mouse detection with JavaScript, you need to calculate the position of this specific element all of the time. Here I did it on full screen, so on a full screen maybe it would be make more sense to use JavaScript. But if you use it on a specific element, maybe it would make more sense using the CSS, because the CSS is relative to that specific element. And normally, like I use it not when I do use it in real life and in real product. I don't do a full grid of like 10 cells on 10 cells. Maybe I'll just do like 4 grids, or just to add like 4 different points of view on a specific element. And when you use it again with 4 divs or 5 divs, it makes a lot more sense and much more performant than using JavaScript. And again, just to start with it, I'm just because it's fun. Yeah, but it's not the main reason, obviously, but that's the reason I started with it. But when I do use it in real life, I don't normally use full grid. I use like a specific point of view
Mhm.
and a specific to add like 4 or 5 divs on top of an element.
Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah. Next, we have a question. Actually, sort of, we're talking a bit about that, so it's a perfect follow-up from CBAC about at what point do we actually decide to make that switch to JavaScript? So you sort of said maybe if it's a full screen. Is there other times as well?
Yeah, well, that's not just for the mouse positioning. It's for every animation. The question is when is it good to use CSS? When is it used to use JavaScript? And I think the answer is again performance. And if you're doing like a large scale animations, as I said, no, don't use JavaScript. Don't use CSS. Use JavaScript. But if you're doing something like a checkbox, like if you want a 3D header, if you want an info card to rotate 180 degrees, it would be actually more performant just to use CSS. You can use JavaScript for things like detect like on click on a button and then change the class. But that's it. Again, the movement and the transition, let CSS do his part. Because if you are doing animations with JavaScript, you need to calculate the position every single render 60 times a minute. You're taking a lot out of the browser. And if it's something simple, again, like text headlines, info cards, if you're doing like an infinite scroll with a 3D animation, it would be much more performant doing it just with CSS. Again, most of my animations that I'm making, it's a proof of concept. It's like a concept car. It looks amazing, but no one will ever drive it. But it's a concept that you can use the basic of it to use in real life with real products.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. That a lot of, even for me, not doing those types of things, but when I'm just playing around with like, sometimes I'm, going over the top with like, how can I solve this with only CSS? And it's not necessarily that makes it in. But then when you run into a situation 3 months down the road and you need a solution to something, and it's sort of, you go, oh, I don't remember exactly how I did it, but like you have that memory that like, oh, this could, maybe that thing that I tried back then could just help me solve this much simpler problem or something like that.
Yeah,
And,
I should know that I work, my day job is as a JavaScript developer, and I do specialize in CSS. So this little combination actually taught me how to solve JavaScript problems with CSS solutions. I had a whole lecture about it. So and some things are just better when CSS does it, because CSS is meant to do some things, JavaScript meant to do other things, and they have great synergy between them. And so but because they're working very well together, there's a lot of things that you can do with both. And the decision of on which way to go, it's mainly, first of all, up to you as a developer, what is more comfortable for you. But it is something that you get over time, that if you know how to solve it in one way and you know how to solve it in a different way, over time you get like the feel of, oh, this problem I can solve in with only CSS. This problem, okay, no, now I need JavaScript. I'm absolutely not saying don't use JavaScript. That's not what I'm saying. Use JavaScript when you need it. Don't use JavaScript when you don't need it. That is the rule of thumb.
Yeah. Ben also brings up a really good point in the chat, saying JavaScript
Oh,
animations can also be more difficult for people who need reduced motion for accessibility reasons.
yeah, I'm actually I forgot about it. Ben Myers, I'm actually going to be on his chat next month, and we're going to talk about this specific topic. We'll talk about JavaScript problems, CSS solutions, and I'm going to give real life examples from real life product that I worked on my day job, and how we solved it. What was the problem? How could we solve it with JavaScript? And then how did we eventually solve it with CSS that was just easier and faster and more performant and more accessible and everything else. Yeah,
So if you
thanks
don't want to
for
miss that, I just put the link to Ben's channel in the chat. So definitely go give him a follow as well. That sounds like a good one.
Yeah.
Hopefully I can make it. Jumping back on over to our big question board. Let's go see what we have. We just finished that one, so I'll get rid of you. And what properties should we not use when animating? So yeah, is there anything we should
Yes.
avoid?
So we again,
Or
the rule of thumb is don't animate anything that causes a reflow. But sometimes we've got to do it. Like for example, sometimes we need to animate like the left and the top, and not animate the translate X and the translate Y. And sometimes we need to animate the height, or sometimes we need to animate the width that causes reflows. So the rule of thumb is don't create those animations that, like, don't animate filters, for example, because animating filters takes a very lot of calculating out of the browsers. It's possible you can animate it, but it would be very slow. It would cause the frame rate to drop. But oh, I think you found a nice little table.
yeah, this is the one I was thinking of before, CSS-Triggers.com. So I just put it in the chat. So it shows you which ones cause layout, paint, or composite. And
Yeah.
it is different across the different browsers, which is kind of annoying, or the different rendering engines, I should say.
Really?
But
I think the difference is for things like backface visibility, but less for things like transform
yeah,
or
whoops.
borders.
Okay.
Actually, animating borders, it's one of the things that causes much more work than I thought, because it takes a lot of the browser. It does causes reflows. Uh, so this is the normal rule of thumb. Don't use anything that causes reflows. But when you're doing, specifically when you're doing 3D animations, normally the one that you use is just transform, because transform is a whole set of functions of rotate and translate and skew, and you can pretty much get away with only animating transforms. You can even use scale, transform scale, and it would be much better than just transforming specific things like width. The problem with transform, when animating transform, is, as I said, sometimes we need a different animation on the x-axis, and different animation on the y-axis, and you can do it with transform. There is a method of doing it, of taking the transform out, the translate out of the transform, but it's not supported on all browsers, and you can do it with Houdini. By the way, when I talk about Houdini, one of the things that I'm most looking for in Houdini is the at property, the custom property API, because then you can animate custom properties, and then that's it. That's the solution. But again, it's not supported on all browsers, so you can't use it still. But the third way of doing it, that sometimes I do use the third way, is I'm actually using two different elements, one inside of another, and then I take the wrapper animation for one axis and the inside element for the different axis.
Yeah, that's cool.
And using those two sometimes using those two elements would be better than to use translate on the width or on the left, because you're still animating just the transform.
Yes, yeah. I think that's one of the things that a lot of people, like one of the easy wins, a lot of times people are, animating top, bottom, left, and right when they could be using a transform instead, because they're just moving something over. They're not doing anything else to it. So like that's one of those
but they
easy
should
wins.
using transform.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the
yeah. So it's, if you are using your left to move something over, use the transform instead. It's one of those, that's usually one of those easy wins early on when you're getting into the performance and side of things a bit more.
Again, when possible, of course.
Of course, yeah. There's always, and it's even like I've looked at solutions where like animating shadows but using a pseudo element, so it's doing the opacity of the pseudo element rather than like playing with a shadow.
Yeah,
Sometimes
I animate shadows a lot, obviously, because I talk about when you're doing animation, specifically 3D, you need to use shadows. Don't use text shadows or box shadows. Don't animate text shadows or box shadows. It's better to animate just to give like doing a specific element with a radial gradient, with a fade on it, and animate the size of that gradient and the opacity of that gradient of that element. It would be much more performant than actually animating the box shadow.
Right. Yeah. I think it also depends. Like, say you have a button that has a shadow on it that gets a little bit more evident when you're hovering. Like, I don't think anyone's ever going to notice a performance hit on that, because it's not like you're doing 20 shadows across the whole page all at once. So, it is, I think, the size of what's happening, but it's, knowing the best practice and how to increase performance and all of that obviously is a important question to cover.
And again, there's like 13 different ways to solve every problem with coding. Few of them are correct, few of them are incorrect. Just find what best for your specific use case. And if you have questions about specific use cases, we're here.
Yeah. If anybody does have specific things, I can copy paste links. If you put a link in the question, we'll take those too. We have a lot of questions now, so we'll speed things up a little bit. We just talked about that. So Evan asked about performance, but we just sort of went through on that one. So I'll get rid of you. Sidist is asking, okay, so I get it's a follow-up question a little bit, I guess. They're asking about when should we start worrying about performance?
Well, when you start using a large number of elements, that's the first warning light. When I'm talking about large number, I'm not talking about 10. I'm talking about 3 figures and up. Because if you're using, like, if you have like 10 boxes, each box made out of 6 different elements, and each one of them is only moving in a different time, you won't get any frame drop. That won't be the problem. If you're having 300 boxes and each of them has like 12, 20 different sizes because you made this weird cube, that would be a problem. So that's the one thing. As if you have a lot of divs, a lot of elements, again, hundreds of elements, that would be a problem. And the second thing is if you have a lot of animations, a lot of keyframes running together, because even if you have one element and you have on that element 20 animations that each of them has a different keyframes for different properties with different times, the browser starts to lose it. Like I think one of the animations seen, one of my favorite ones is the one with the ping pong table, and it has a lot of animations, and I didn't thought about performance when I used it, so I didn't care about it. But it has a lot of animations, and when you run it on a slower computer, you do see a very hard lag on the movement. Um, and again, the rule of thumb. By the way, when I bought my computer, I remember there was a friend told me this computer is too good, and I asked him why. He said because you can't test anything on this computer, and he was absolutely correct. Because on my computer, this everything runs on 60 frames per second. I don't care what you put in it. Uh, but on normal computers, you need to check your animations on regular computers. Go to your, this old computer that you have on your old uncle's house, and test your animations on that computer. Test it on mobile, because mobile normally things run slower. And if you don't have lags on mobiles and on older computers, you have nothing to worry about.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, testing
Oh.
for that, but like you said, testing on slow machines is always a good idea to our older machines. This is always a question that comes up, I think, all the time. So it's a
Best
good one.
strategy is to bypass the fact that display none to display block is not. It's not supposed to be editable. It's display none. It's not on the DOM. Display
Mhm.
block. It's on the DOM. So obviously you can use things like. Well, first of all, if you wanted to have a display block, the display is block, and what you need to animate is everything else. You can animate the size, like the scale. Instead of display none, just add scale 0 and animate it to scale 1. This is one option. You can and while you do it, add an animation on the opacity. Um, this is one thing. Normally, I don't have that problem because I don't think of those two as things that you need to animate between them. Because animation display none is when you don't want something in the on the DOM. Display block is just the way that element is faced inside the flow. Uh, Block or inline, by the way, that's the same thing. So it's not, you can't even think about it in the terms of how do I make this animation, because you won't, it would never be possible to animate between them, and you shouldn't. So think about what you can animate, like the opacity, the size, the position. One thing that I've done pretty recently actually is that I had a wrapper div for like a card, and the card was positioned relative to absolute relative to that card, to the bottom of the card, and what I animated is the height of the card from 0 to whatever it was. So like the card actually opened from the top. And those are the things, and obviously the wrapper had overflow of hidden on it, obviously. uh, yeah, so those are the things, or the direction that you need to think about if you need something to be hidden and then visible. Don't think about animating the display property, because it's not the way to go.
Awesome. That one we can get rid of. That one we can do next. That one. She Gamer asked, for mobile devices, should we leave this kind of animation out? So I don't know which specific animation they were talking about. But do you ever, like, say we were just talking a little bit about performance and testing on mobile. Do you ever disable certain things within media queries or something? Or
Well, specifically in animation that I'm doing, no, and even the animation that I'm doing like in real life, so they performant enough so that I won't animate it on mobile devices.
Mhm.
But the thing that I do hide out or comment out in specifically in mobiles are animations on hover, because obviously mobile don't have hover. Uh, so it's just easier not to render this entire class, because it's it's irrelevant. But again, most of the thing that I've done for real life product, I didn't encounter any problem in mobile and in desktop, so I didn't found a reason to do it. But if you have like animation on the header, for example, that is a 3D animation that's a bit more heavy or something, yeah, maybe it would be a better, a good decision to make something different in mobile. Again, I didn't encounter a specific issue like it, but maybe yeah, in specific animations, maybe it will be a good idea.
Mm,
If you are talking about, if you want to send what animation was she talking about, I would.
perfect. And then the next question, I think, is a good one that I have an answer for. Is there any recommended? Oh, maybe not. Do you have any
What?
recommended free courses or lessons for absolute beginners to animations? Uh,
Uh,
we sort
Free.
of talked about it
I
at the
talked about
beginning.
it when at the beginning that when I started out there was nothing. But if you want something free, yeah, follow the people that making animation, 3D animation in Twitter and in CodePen. Those are, see what are they doing, but don't just look at the end result. Dive into the code. Uh, Really try to understand each line of the code, what it does, what happens if I change it. Just try delete a line. Try to understand what's the difference, uh, and work your way up from those things. This is the way I started. Again, when I started, there was a lot less people that was doing animation, and I had a background in animation because I came from gaming. But this is the way you want to start. Um, but you said you had an answer.
Oh
I
well,
did,
but when I didn't see that it was free, and it's also she did say absolute beginners, but just to
uh,
let people know that Amit is holding a workshop over on Smashing Magazine. So I put the link in the chat, and I'll mention it again before the
oh,
end.
thank you. Yeah, so that
Yeah.
workshop, it's not. It's we are starting at the very very basic, but I'm not sure that it's for the very
Beginner.
beginners.
Hmm.
Yeah, because I am starting at the basics of animations, but you do need to understand the basic of CSS before we're going. But this is a really deep dive into the world of 3D and movement in CSS. It's a fully hands-on 4 days workshop. Each day is dedicated to a specific topic. So the first day is all about positioning and finding yourself in the 3D world, understanding what perspective is, what perspective origin is, what transform style preserve 3D actually means. We're actually going deep dive into these topics. So this is like the first day. The second day is all about movement, transitioning, and animations, and multi animations, and so on. The third day is all about control. We talked about mouse positioning, but how to control your animations with inputs and with scrollers and so on. And the fourth day is like putting it all together, like building a fully like a full animations with a lot of elements, a lot of elements and a lot of animations. Everything syncs up, and we're going to use everything that we learned in the previous days. So if you do want to really deep dive into this world, you can sign up. I think you can. There's still like an early bird special. So if you do
Yep.
want to sign up, yeah.
And if you are with Smashing, you do get discounts as well. And I think Smashing also does things to try and, I don't know if maybe I'm wrong. If you're working at a
Do,
company, usually companies are willing to pay for things like this.
yeah,
So
they
make
have
sure you let your
like
boss know. Like,
yeah. I
don't they
think
have
it's
that like a how to get your boss to pay for it type of thing?
yes, yes. I think I saw something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can, if you're interested in it, the link's in the chat, and if you want to try and get your boss to pay for it, there's something somewhere that they help on that front, or they have a document that sort of tries to encourage companies to look into that. So yeah, um, I'm so there's that one. And next up, a little bit off topic, but we were talking about writing articles for CSS-Tricks. So you
Yeah.
have a lot more experience than I do, so I'll let you answer
Yeah.
that.
I remember way few years ago, maybe you remember, I had a little stream of my own that you were a guest in. And Chris Crier, who is the editor of the founder of CSS-Tricks, was also there, and I asked him that exact question: how do I write a CSS article? And he says, send me an email with a topic, and I'll tell you yes or no. And that's exactly what I did. And yeah, we're in contact ever since. You can, I think there's actually right in the bottom, like guest writing exactly, and there's actually everything is over there. But what I can say about writing for CSS-Tricks, what is important for them and what I love as a reader is when you write about something, you feel that something. You're writing from inside. You're writing from something that you actually experience. It's not something, oh, I learned something, so let's write about it. Or you normally won't find like 10 ways to make blah blah blah. No, it's really like I had this huge problem and I figured out a way to solve it in an interesting way. Now let me talk about it, or let me write about it. So those are the types of articles that they're looking for. I'm not related to them in any way, by the way. I'm not trying to represent, but that's what I like about CSS-Tricks, and that's what you need to bring if you want to join
Mhm.
the team of writers.
Yeah. And I have to say, if anybody does ever write for them, it's a very pleasant experience. You get,
Yeah,
once your idea has been accepted and you actually start working on it, you're working with an editor, which makes you look like a much better writer than you are, and it's you sort of flesh things out, and it's a good way to push yourself, if ever. So it is, if you have any things that you've ever thought about writing, but you don't want to start your own blog, and you sort of want to have it on everybody gets their eyes on it. It's pretty cool. And Smashing Magazine too. I think they have if you go on their site, you can look for how to be a guest writer, and they have a link on
yeah.
there too. I haven't written for them, but I think they have something. Next up, we have most of the animations rely on mouse hover or mouse position. So what are some good examples we can use for mobile devices when that's not available?
Well, you don't have a Hoover, but you still have an on-click if you want to transform something. Anything from checkboxes to buttons to info cards. You don't have the Hoover on the button, but you do have the on-click,
Mhm.
the active type. And if the button does something, you can. And one more thing is just sometimes we have animations. Sometimes we want animation that don't have any triggers, just like if you want animated text. Most of the things that I do that relevant to mobile are things that people call them micro interactions. Like if you have a like button, so I want, when I click the like, I want the heart to jump like in a nice way or something like that. When you're talking about these type of animations, forget about the Hoover for a second. It doesn't really matter if you're on desktop or on mobile.
Yeah, I think a lot of the ones that we see are, I'm guilty of it, because if I'm doing a YouTube video, obviously the simplest thing is just like, oh, let's look at how we can do this, and you have a mouse, so it's easy just to do quick examples with hover. But like you said, I think a lot of and hover animations for the most part, I think, tend to be very simple. You're just sort of trying to show that there's a small bit of interactivity potential. Depends on the
Mm,
situation, obviously. But I
yeah,
think there's often more use cases for when there's the actual, like that next step where there is the interaction, rather than just when we're moving our
exactly.
mouse on stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Next question by Mappy Stone. I had trouble with the transform origin. Do you have any tips?
Yeah, don't use transform origin. Yeah, well, we talked about it earlier. Transform origin caused the image to be distorted. It's really hard to understand. As I said, I'm working for that workshop. I'm working on ways to explain what is transform origin. It's not exactly what we think. We can't really grasp it in normal. In normal terms that you think of like 3D cameras. So it would be better to leave the transform origin exactly where it is. And if you want, for example, to move the transform origin up, instead of it, rotate the scene a few degrees on the x-axis up, backwards. So you'll have actually, if you rotate the scene, you will get a better effect closer to what you're expecting to see than if you'll try to animate to move the transform origin.
Cool. Sorry, I was just looking at the chat. I just going back to CSS-Tricks. He's asking,
No,
do they?
Marco D69. The answer is no.
Oh, what did Marco ask?
That was the next
Oh, the
question I
next
saw.
question there. Sorry, I was just looking in the chat itself.
Oh, okay.
There's something I lost it now because I scrolled away, but they were asking if you get paid for CSS-Tricks, and they do generally pay for guest articles. Yes. Okay, next one. If
Well,
it
yes and no.
depends.
By the
It
way,
depends if
yeah,
you're promoting something or what
yeah,
the purpose of the article is and stuff. But they'll let you know what their budget is once you get in touch with them and once you sort of flesh things out, what the
yeah.
plan is.
Yeah. So for Marco's question, if something is positioned absolutely relative to its parent, if you change the width, it doesn't affect the reflow because it doesn't affect the positions of other elements around it.
Yeah, I never thought of that
But
before. That's a really good question.
yeah, but it does affect if you have. It's still not the best idea to animate a width of something because it does actually affect everything that is inside that div. So, like if
Right.
you have a container with a text on it and you animate the width of it, it will calculate the text every time because you need to line breaks and so on.
Mhm.
So it's still most of the time, it's not a good idea to animate the width, but if it's like a steady like a div that you want to translate it to transition the width, maybe it would be better to scale the x. There you can't have it transition or animation on transform scale x, not just the x, not the y. So you'll get the same effect as animating the width with much better results.
It just on like I know I've sort of experimented with that before of having things that sort of like appear. So you're doing like scaling on the y-axis only. But in those like what would be this, like if say there's text in there, if you're scaling the parent, doesn't it
Yeah,
squish
it
like the
does.
content that's inside? So then
It does.
yeah,
That's why, like the example I gave earlier, that I gave the wrapper. Uh,
right.
so this is one way to do it. You can actually animate the width or the scale of the wrapper, and
Mm-hmm.
then just have the content inside of it be visible and not visible. That way, you're not recalculating anything from scratch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. And just if case anybody new is here, if you do want to ask a question on our board of questions here, just do a command of Q and then you can ask your question and get them in there. And we have a few, I think they were testing things out. So we'll answer that one. That's not a question. I do see questions about this type of thing quite a bit where, I mean, that would definitely involve some reflow and stuff, but smoothly rearrange flex items if one of them becomes bigger
Yeah,
with flex
that's
wrap.
a good
Mm.
question. Well, the short answer is no. The better answer is that you would probably need to add some JavaScript to it. There are a few JavaScript libraries that does it. Sadly, there is not at least not a perfect way to do it with CSS only yet.
Mhm.
Maybe somewhere in the future.
Yeah,
But again, the short answer is you're gonna better use JavaScript.
that does make me think. I'm actually curious now because I know with Chrome working on Subgrid because they have their new NG layout going. Because the with Grid, you're supposed to be able to animate the tracks,
Yeah.
but only Firefox implemented it. So I'm curious if that's actually going to be coming to Chrome with their updated layout
Well,
engine.
I think so. I have read something about it recently, and yeah, but maybe it will be a way to animate those type of to do those types of animation, but it
Mhm.
won't be Flex. It would be Grid.
It would be great, I guess.
Sometimes it's actually better, but for specific issue, for specific
Mhm.
usage. But yeah, when it would be possible so to animate the lanes in the grid, so it would be nice. Nice little workaround.
Mhm. And that's one of those things that sort of like we've seen where there's been a few things that get put in Grid and then it trickles down. They're like, oh, well, we could bring this into Flexbox too. So
Yeah, like
hopefully,
Gap.
eventually, yeah, Gap is the best example. hopefully that also means one day that sort of if they can figure out how to get their layout engine to do it with Grid, then maybe that'll eventually trickle down into Flex. But again, I don't know what the impacts on, like there's a lot of
So
recalculations that must have to go on when stuff like that's
yeah,
happening. So on the repaint at least, and probably reflows too.
yeah. So but maybe according to what you say, should we expect subflex?
Good question. I hope not. That would just confuse the heck out of me.
Okay, because I'm still waiting for the subgrid.
Yes, but I've seen both Safari and Chrome are working on it now, or
Yeah,
Chromium, I
yeah.
should say. So I'm holding out. I
All
think
thanks
that's
to you.
I would. I don't think it's thanks to me, but I think it was just good timing on my part for when I did those videos.
Yeah.
This question, I just realized I need to update my question collector to like highlight the message, like the active one. I have to be like first
Mm.
child or whatever is like bigger font size and green or something. So we're putting some emphasis on it. But
Yeah.
is animating clip path a good idea for performance?
Um, well, it depends. Good idea. Uh, Relative to what? You can obviously animate clip path. I'm actually just done yesterday. I've done an animation that uses a lot of clip path animation just to check this specific topic out. I can show it if you want to.
For sure.
Uh, just in a second. So asking if it's a good idea. Again, if you're just using it on on one element or on a few elements, it's not a problem. I did just for testing 72 elements
Wow.
with heavy click path. Just let me run it and I'll tell you. Mm. Yeah. So do you want me to share the screen for a sec?
Yeah, I'll switch over. Let's make sure,
Oop,
see if I can do
wait,
this.
wait.
So that's my screen, and if you share yours, oh no, it's not working.
Oh, I didn't share mine yet.
Oh, you didn't share yours.
Wait a minute.
It should appear,
Yeah, sure.
hopefully,
Okay, yeah.
and we'll see. I might have to pull up the source. 1 second. No problemo. I'm actually a little bit of the joys of trying a new way of streaming. Control center, copy link. Oh my goodness, that I can see it, and I'm impressed.
Oh, thanks.
Okay.
It's worth waiting. Yeah, I've done it yesterday. I didn't want to upload it yet.
There we go.
Yeah. So each one of those shapes is made out of 4 cubes. Oh, there's actually more. There's 36 rings. Each ring are made out of four different elements, and they all have the animation on the clip path. They do have transforms on it because they rotate, but once they're on the inside, the clip path goes for a pointy one, and for the outside they're going for a wider. So you could see. Maybe will have. Wait a minute. Yeah. So I'll just move it here for a second. This is my VS Code, obviously. Yep, this is not what I want to do. I want to make it bigger. Oh yeah. So yeah, so you can see that I'm using the clip path for the. This is for the inside, and this is for the outside. And there's, as I said, there's a lot of more than 100 elements in there. This is uh, the HTML. Let's go, but for a second, yeah. So as you can see, there's no performance issues. I think. So I don't see any problem with it. But again, is it a good idea? It depends on relative to what. Because if you just want to move the width, for example, like we talked earlier, and you're going to use ClickPath for that, no, you can. Don't. Uh, that's the general idea. If you have a better alternative, use a better alternative. If you don't, you can absolutely use ClickPath in the animations.
That's really cool.
Thanks.
I, all these things that you do though, just like it, you can just put it on and stare at it for a while. It's always so impressive. They're intoxicating to look at.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm gonna actually ask, like, when it comes to like, how do you come up with the idea for that? Because I would
Well,
not
sleep
only
deprivation.
sleep deprivation. Because for me, not only would I not know where to start if I wanted to do that, but I wouldn't even come up with the idea to make something like that in the first place.
Well,
So, like,
it actually started. It started from that exact same question that I had a few days ago. How do I animate clip path? Can I animate clip path if is it performant and so on?
right.
And the first iteration I can actually show you. Here I'm taking a bit of backstage here. So if you see, there is a lot of comments out because there is the first iteration. This was the first iteration. It was just a triangle, and you can see, by the way, that they called it triangle, and because the first iteration was just a triangle that going from a triangle to a like a, I don't know, and then said, oh, but let's add another triangle and make it bigger, and then I said, let's make four,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I built from there, but. Most of the ideas I have are coming from questions. As I said, I'm using animation to test CSS, so not all of them. Some of them is just I've got an idea. But like example, the stickman I've done, which I've done a stick horse with Alex, by the way. It started with a conversation that I had with a friend. We talked about rigs and how do we build rigs for 3D characters, and I said maybe can I build a rig, a 3D rig with pure CSS? And he said no, you can't. So I had to prove him that I can. But normally most of my ideas come just from talks and from questions that I ask. Can something be done with CSS, like the mapping, the mouse position, the mapping the mouse position? It was a question: can I use pure CSS to map the mouse position? So I've checked it out, and I've done a lot of iteration, and I also did an iteration with a click and drag that uses the active feature on top of the hover. So yeah, there are a lot of things that you can do with CSS, and all the animation. Most of the animations are just let's see what can I do other than what we already know.
Yeah, that's cool. Marco's just asking. He says he can't quite figure out how the clip path is applied. Could you isolate one of the elements?
Yeah, so let's take this one for. So this is one element, first of all, and let's pause the. Sorry, I'm gonna pause the other animations. Why didn't it work? Oh, because I'm not. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. Oh, and let's pause this one as well. Why is it turning? Oh, it's not turning. Yeah. Okay, so let's do. Let's just rotate it to 90 degrees just so we can see it. Not this one, the other one. Yeah. Okay. So maybe now we could see it. Not like 90. Let's do it like 60.
Yep.
I'm trying to find a nice angle to look at it. Let's go for the ring. Let's rotate it on. Let's give it a transform. Let's make a rotate on the x-axis. Yeah, okay. So now you can actually see it when it goes like from the point to the white screen, to the white. So the point is when it's inside, and the white is when it goes outside. Let's rotate it a bit. Now it's 45. Let's maybe look at it. Yeah, from the top. So this is maybe make it more clear.
So that's the clip path that's animating right now that we're seeing.
Yeah, so the clip path actually, so when it wides, the clip path has 4 points, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and I actually animate only the top two.
Ones.
But there's actually, if you can see, there's one div here that now let's change it. You know, let's color each one of them in a different color, maybe. Let's make on this one, let's say background color of red. Yeah. So you can't actually see it, but if I go to the ring, no, yeah, moved form. Yeah. So if you look at just one of them,
There it
yeah.
is.
So this is yeah. So it's like on the other way. So there's one. Each side is made out of two clip paths. One like this is 1, 2, 3, 4. So I only animate these two on these ones, and on the other side I'm animating all the other
Oh
four.
yeah. Okay.
So if you look at the no, this is not the one. This is the one. Yeah. So if you look at the clip path, so again here, as you can see, I'm only animating those 2 points. This is the first 2 points are stable, and I'm only animating the other 2 points. And here I'm animating all the other points from 100% to 50/50, and I animate again the other two points to
So they're
interact
matching.
with those. Yeah.
That's cool.
Thanks.
I'm
And
actually
if you want, by the way, all of the animations that I'm making are all everything is on my code pen, so the code is there. You can see everything that I'm doing. You can interact. You can fork it to your pen and try to make those differences. Trying to, as I said earlier, how to learn things. This is how I learn. Just take something out of fork something that you like to learn and try to isolate a specific element and try changing it.
mhm.
And once you understand how to change it, you do understand how it originally worked.
Awesome. Yeah, and it makes more sense now thinking of it. Like it wasn't just like I had this crazy idea and I wanted to see how to do it. The iteration process to get to that point, I think helps make it a bit more achievable too. I'm going to do this one thing, and then you've got that, and you're like, oh, what if I try doing this with it, and what if I try doing this, and then it sort of becomes something better and better as you go on.
Exactly. Yeah. That was that is the general idea.
Even like that, it looks really cool.
Yeah.
There we go, and then it goes back to
Yeah. I've redone the changes because I do want to publish it later on. Oh, I
yeah.
think that something is wrong now.
Oh no,
I don't know what they changed. Never mind.
sorry.
Never mind. Forget about
Okay.
it.
The next question is, what do you think about solutions like Lottie files?
They're great for when you need to use Lottie files. No, seriously. When you do, it's like asking me about people ask me about GreenSock and people ask me about 3JS. They're all wonderful tools. I work with them all, by the way. In my day job, I use Lottie a lot
Mhm.
because they need certain animations that doing it with CSS just won't be reasonable. Um, so using Lottie is making a lot of sense if you're using large scale animations and if you have images inside of the animations and you want to manipulate those images. Don't do it with CSS because maybe you can, but it would be so much work. Use Lottie wherever you can. It's as I said earlier, I'm not saying don't use JavaScript. You should use JavaScript when you need to use it.
Mhm.
Lottie for me is just like 3JS. It's just another way to solve a problem. And each problem has again several solutions, few right, few wrong. I again, Lottie is a wonderful solution. I use it all the time for specific animations.
Cool. So the next one, let's go back. I just did some live refactoring. So we can
Oh,
highlight.
great!
So Web Dev Journey is asking. It feels to me like diving deep into CSS animations will require a lot of time investment. As a full stack dev, is there any? There's always so much to learn. Isn't it better to leave that to the pros?
Well, that is a good question because, well, yes and no. Okay, let's start with the no. It's always better to know. Okay, if you know something, uh, even if it has nothing to do with your current if the thing that you currently do in your job, maybe somewhere along the way you will have a different problem that you could have solved in a different way. It's just another tool in your tool belt. But as for the other part, leaving it to the pros, there is more and more companies now understand to separate the front end. There is this article about the front of the front end and the back of the front end, specifically if you're talking about full stack developers. So more and more companies do have specific people for the HTML, CSS part, and other for the JavaScript functionality part. So if you're doing it if you think of it like from the product point of view, yeah, leave it to the pros. But if you look at it, if you're looking at it from your personal perspective, no, learn something new. Specifically, if it's outside of your comfort zone, take like an hour a week, couple of hours a week. Hear a couple of podcasts. Look at streams like this one, and maybe you'll learn something that would help you in your different in your regular job.
Yeah, I also think there's sometimes, especially in web development, there's always something new to learn, and it doesn't matter what you're focusing on. Which for me is one of the things that draws me to it. I love the fact that it's just, I like learning and I like learning new things, but it can be overwhelming at the same time, because anytime you look into a new topic, you find out that topic's much bigger than maybe you expected it to be. But it's one of the, it's sort of like with accessibility, that you don't need to learn accessibility hard stop. You need to, if you can add that one extra thing because you're working on a new project, and okay, how can I make, what would be better in this situation? So I think the same thing can be brought to animations and other stuff like that. Doing something like we were seeing your fancy twirly things like that, not everyone's going to be able to do that all of a sudden. It would take, you've been doing it for so long. It's a big time investment when you look at the big picture, but it didn't just happen overnight either.
Yeah, of course. And by the way, you talked about accessibility. Do we have questions about accessibility with animations or with 3D animations? Because if we don't have a question, I'm going to add a question.
Yeah. Well, I'll let we'll see if anything comes up with it, and we'll make sure that we definitely cover that for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's definitely one that's worth answering. But this next one is something that we've all been wondering for a while. So when will you start streaming on Twitch?
I don't know. I do have a Twitch channel because I wanted to start Twitch streaming, and I remember that in back in December I said like at January I'm going to start streaming, and then in January I said that in February I'm going to start streaming, and I don't know, because I don't know. I much prefer like being here instead and not on my stream. But I'm guessing that it will happen in the near future. I hope so. I don't know if it's gonna be like a regular stream, like once a week, like you do and like Alex. I'm streaming 2 or 3 times a week. Maybe I will be more like Steph, that I feel like it, so I'm on.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe I think it will happen soon. I hope.
I hope so too. I'd love to, even if it's just you, like even if you're not like hanging out with the chat so much, you're just building out something and showing us a bit of behind the scenes.
Like exactly this thing that you saw earlier, working through and seeing those iterations, seeing those things. I think it has its own value, maybe even more than just seeing the final product. To seeing the process, to see the problems, to see the different ways that I consider solving it. So yeah, and there is also a personal value for me to get the feedback from the chat, from the people that would eventually see that those animations. So yeah, it would happen soon, I hope.
A few people mentioning that they would be there when you start streaming.
Thank you. And by the way, I saw somebody ask about a YouTube channel. I do have a YouTube channel, but I'm not uploading any content on it, so don't follow me on YouTube. I seriously don't have anything on it. So.
the next one, what was the weirdest or most interesting animation you made, and what did you like about it?
Actually, Chris asked me about it. I did an interview for Copen Radio. It's going to be on next week.
Nice.
So he asked me that exact question, like he asked me what was my favorite and most difficult animation, and I don't have a favorite. Obviously, it's like picking a favorite child. I mean, you know it is, but you're not going to say it. But I think the most difficult animation I've done, at least for me, was the one I did with the Newton's Cradle, which is it doesn't actually look like it, but it had so many small things, small problems that I had to solve. Everything from the width of the line of the strings to the way the flow reflects on the ball, to the movement of the. If you go to the showcase one, yeah. So it's this one, yeah. So there's a lot of different things about it, little small things that took me a long time to figure out. The shadows of the balls that bouncing up and the hit back of the other balls when the balls fly back. Uh, there was a lot of questions. It took me a very long time, and when it was finally finished and I looked at it, I said, "Okay, this is what I had in my mind. This is what I wanted to do," and I was very pleased. So I don't know about the weirdest, but it was probably one of the most difficult ones for me. Um, I don't know if you want to elaborate about what weird is for you, for the one who asked the question. Maybe I will have a better answer. But I think this one is actually the one I worked on. I remember like for a long time. I was like every time solving just a different aspect of this animation.
I remember when you put that one out. Yeah, I can see why why that's up there.
Yeah, I learned a lot from it. Like I give you a very small example. As I said, the width of the line, because the line is at the same looks at the same width from every direction, but it's still a line 2 pixels. Because if you're rotating a line, so you will see it you won't see it on a specific point.
Yep.
So yeah, there was a lot of things to solve, but hey, it's there.
It looks awesome. Yeah, it's really nice.
Thank you.
All right, next up. I have seen people creating some amazing nature scenery or wallpapers using CSS. How to create such naturally occurring shapes in CSS?
Well, specifically in CSS drawing, I'm not the most. It's not the thing I'm doing the most. I know people like Ben Evans, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the generative art. Yeah.
Not generative.
No.
He did like this scenery
Oh,
of
yes.
water, like a
Yes.
scene,
Yeah.
and he did.
Sorry, I was thinking of someone else.
You thought about George Francis, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he did like a glass of water, and he did a portrait of his daughter, and it looks like, oh my god, how did the hell you did it CSS? And the quick answer is with background image, you need a lot of things. Yeah, so if you look at the pure CSS landscape, that's what I'm talking about,
This
and,
one,
and the
yes.
pure CSS portrait, yeah, and it's amazing to see those things with CSS, with pure CSS. It's obviously a lot of divs and a lot of background image, a lot of gradients, a lot of positioning specific gradients inside the background image, and yeah, look at it, it's amazing. Yeah, this is like the type of thing that I would never would be able to do it. Yeah, it's too weird. Amazing. Yeah, so again, it's not my strong suit. And by the way, this last thing that he did with this alien
This one's
alien
insane.
trash. Yeah, and it also moves, by the way,
Yeah,
with
it has like a parallax
the
on it.
mouse. Yeah, parallax effect on it. That's amazing.
Yeah, Ben's crazy.
Ben's crazy. but
there we
is
go.
so talented. He worked on this one half an hour a day for a year. So I mean, you look at it, yeah, it makes sense. But how do you have the discipline to sit half an hour a day for a year and have, but yeah, the result is just mind blowing. I remember the first day that he released it, I actually took like an hour off work and I said, I'm this is what I'm doing right now. I need to read every line of the code and understand every line what it says. It's amazing.
A few simple questions. What theme are you using in VS Code?
I do not remember. I can check.
So if you start streaming, this will be a question you get all the time. So
really?
it's good to know. People love knowing what theme you use.
Yeah, I actually close it for a second, but I open it and tell you in a few minutes. Okay? Yeah.
No problem.
And what extensions did I use? Okay, in a couple of minutes I will open the VS Code. Wait, I'll just open it. I don't actually use a lot of extensions. I used, the brackets, the live compiler, obviously, and I'm using the material theme.
Material theme, cool.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't have any real any. I'm looking at the extensions right now. I don't have anything that is mentionable. Maybe unless no, just the brackets and the indent rainbow and the the live SAS compiler, and I'm not using the live SAS compiler anymore, but I'm using the live server, and that's pretty much that's it. I do have a lot in my VS Code. I do have a lot of snippets that I use. Like if I'm writing TRA, it's already transform, translate, -50, -50. And if I'm writing NOE, so it's like already the wildcard selector with transform style, translate, preserve 3D, and those kind of things. It just comes naturally because I'm using those things a lot over time.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Question about what Dreamweaver does. Have you ever used Dreamweaver?
Yeah, I've been a developer for a long time, so I have used Dreamweaver years ago, but it was a way to create animations, or not animation, but animated websites, let's call it.
Back then, yeah.
In the but I didn't use it for like 12 years or something. I don't know why. But
it's not terrible. I don't now. I mean, it's just another text editor basically, but it has the newest. Well, I haven't used the newest one, but the last time I used it, which was a few years ago, it has like the built-in. It runs Chromium now as like the live preview, but it's in the editor. I think it comes with a built-in FTP client and other stuff. It's just Adobe trying to have something that does something. I wouldn't really recommend it, but if it's something you use, it's actually not as bad as its reputation.
I don't know if the reputation is bad, just that it's old.
Yeah, I mean the newest
has been there.
Oh, it's been around forever. But then they completely tore it down and rebuilt it basically as a text editor that it also has like Webflow with the visual editor style. It has that built into it as well, so you can write your CSS or you can use that. Yeah.
I haven't used it. Yeah, I'm not using a lot of text editors or Webflows or something like that. I have used it only when I used to freelance and clients have like a pre-made something. So
right, yes,
I used it, but Dreamweaver not in the last couple of years.
Yeah, as Mark was saying, it used to be Macromedia before it was Adobe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Forgot about it.
Brent here asking, since I guess we brought it up, but dealing with accessibility in animation.
Yeah. So, well, that's a good question. Actually, there's like three rules of thumb when you're doing animations and when you want to keep them accessible. One of them, don't hide content. Like if you had a lot of elements that is one inside of the other, and one some on top of the other. Still make sure that they are still readable using screen readers. You have a lot of built-in screen readers in Mac and in Windows, and there's a lot of free ones you can use. Check your animation if you have text on it, or if you have anything that is content that people need to see it with screen readers. Make sure that it's there. Second rule of thumb: don't forget about keyboard navigation. If you are using keyboard navigation, if you have using like checkboxes, or if you using like info cards or inputs, make sure that those animations have some sort of a way to first, that they are accessible through the keyboards, and that there are some sort of visual that says that it's on it. Like I remember when I first published my checkboxes, I got a response that was absolutely correct. Oh, it's not accessible. So the first thing I did was obviously add a visual for the tab mode. And the third thing about accessibility with animations is don't use animations. There is the preferred reduced motion, and you really, really need to act to treat it, to take it under account. There's actually a great article, I think 99% it's by Michelle Barker, about how to deal with preferred reduced motion. The easiest way is just to say animation duration 0 and transition duration 0. So the transition and the animation actually happens, but there is no animations there. There's no time between them, but there are other ways to do it, and it's very, very important to actually use a preferred reduced motion when you are using animations. And if you're not using it, you may cause actually real harm. So yeah, don't forget about it. Specifically if you have like big colorful things that flashes. Yeah, use preferred reduced motion, because people actually rely on it.
Yeah. And yeah, who was it? Even there's also like, I mean, the other thing is like, even you want to be doing it for the right reasons, but if anybody's like questioning it all, even parallax effects and stuff like that causes motion sickness for some people. And so if you have a site that's full of all these fancy, cool looking parallax effects that you in love with, and all of a sudden people, and it's not a small amount of the population, if they're on your site and they start seeing it, they're just leaving. So if you can do it, it's not hard to do. It's really just at media prefers reduce motion, reduce. You might, depending on what it is, you sometimes have to, build things in a little bit more. Um, I know that and you can also do a no preference. So there's the two schools of thought. One of them is that you should just have nothing as the default and then include the animations within the no preference. But then
Yeah.
there's the common resets where you see where it's the other way around, where it's just, if they have, then you're turning the animation speeds down and everything. And
Yeah,
this is
because
actually
not all browsers actually support the
exactly, yeah.
preferred reduced motion, so
Mhm.
that's why the school of not doing anything as
A
a
default.
basic is as a default may be better. I actually have found the article I
Mhm.
was talking about. It is by Michelle Barker. I'm actually linking it here in the chat.
Awesome.
So it actually talks about all of those issues and how to deal with them.
Perfect. Yeah. So definitely give that a read if you want to know a bit more. And it is something that I'm trying to learn a bit more about, because I'm trying to learn more about accessibility sort of all the time slowly. And there is also, like, just because it is prefers reduced motion, it doesn't mean that there's zero animations. So there is that, like, as well, right?
Yeah, because there is some animations that are acceptable. If you are doing things like if you're moving like the colors, again, not flashing colors, but if you are fading colors, it is it's still acceptable. But when we're talking about 3D and things like that, so no, just use preferred. Just don't use them
Mhm.
in this context.
I just thought Jay's here and just mentioning the same thing. The trick is to use a custom property coefficient. Keyword is
Yeah.
prefers reduced because it doesn't mean zero. Yeah. Thanks for jumping in, Jay.
Hello, Jay.
And actually, I know Jay uses a lot of GSAP. Do you use GSAP very often?
Well, not very often, but I do use GSAP. As I said earlier, it's an amazing tool. Obviously, it has its place. Sadly, in my work, we don't use it because you need to pay for on it. But do use it on some projects in CodePen. A bit less lately, but there is a few samples I've done over the years. The thing about GSAP, it's actually also like. The people ask where did I get my ideas of. I actually take tools like GSAP that have like all of these options, and I said, okay, this is how I've done it with their tool. Now let's do it with pure CSS. So just again, it's just a way to explore the boundaries and what can we do. I'm not saying that it's better to use it with clean CSS. Just a way to a way to think of new ideas.
Awesome. And I just saw a question about when Stephanie's going to be streaming. I don't know. She's as Amit said before, she sort of streams when she feels like it's time to stream.
Normally on Fridays.
Yes. Script Raccoon is asking about animations in Firefox, and they're slow and choppy
Script Raccoon
sometimes.
is the one that made the sphere with the perspective click button, if I'm not mistaken. Watered complex animation with many elements. Yeah, as I said earlier, if you use a lot of elements, I don't know if Firefox is slower than Chrome, but if you use a lot of elements, if you use a lot of animations, then yeah, things would be slower. That's just the way it is.
Also, I mean, yeah, and it could just be that depending on what you're doing, we have Blink Gecko.
Yeah, obviously it's depending on what type of animation are you applying to these elements. But again, if you're using more elements, then you have more source of problems.
Yeah. So it depends, I think, on what's being animated, how that rendering engine's handling it, but I would think that if it's being choppy in Firefox, that it could also be that maybe Chrome's handling that really well, but if you're on a slower computer, that maybe it wouldn't be doing so great, and it's just passing things off. So it depends a little bit on a few different things, but rendering engines sometimes can come into play. Mr. Carson will have to answer that on another stream, where to put display flex. But definitely, if you want those types of things, I take it you're pretty new. So I'd say the one piece of advice before we jump back into animations is if you're using, don't use it until you need it. So if you just need things to be stacked on top of each other, just let them do their thing. And when you need content to, okay, now I need to make a layout, then maybe you could look at using flex, just because it's I've seen times where people just put flex on everything just because they're not sure, and then that can lead to problems as well.
I told you I've seen people making like a wildcard selector display flex, and I'm like, no. No,
that's a headache.
No.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So
general tips when making complex animations from nothing. I'm having trouble understanding the first step when I see a good animation.
Well, actually, it sounds weird, but for me, the first step, specifically when I'm doing complex animations, I have a pen and paper here, and I try to I'm not I can't draw for shit. I'm a horrible painter, but I try to understand the movement before I begin. And I start with a pen and a pencil, and I draw just the rough shapes and try to understand what I want to get to. This is the first step for me. And when I actually starting coding, I'm starting with the HTML, with the markup, and trying to put all the at least one of every type of element inside of it. So I start with a scene component, and then if it's like the one we've seen earlier, so I have the ring component, and inside of it the triangle component, and then I'll start animating just the first one. I start with the rotation. I'll begin with the continue with the clip path, and so on. And once you have more and more shapes, then you can actually start with the iteration and improvements. If you take more complex animations like the the ping pong table I've done. So it started with just 3 elements, just the table, 4 elements, the table, the ball, and just 2 pedals. And over time you add more elements and more animation to those elements and more movement to those different element inside those elements. Yeah, so it's something that you build up, but the first step is just understanding what the movement is or the basic core movement is going to be. And again, as I said earlier, specifically for me, actually this animation was just for the sake of animation. But the first thing is, what is the question that I'm asking? Like the one with the clip path is, would it be able to clip path a large number of elements? What would be the downside? How can we do it so it would look nice, it would look smooth, and so on?
Mm-hmm.
So the first step again is, what is, if you're doing the animation just for the animation, so just start with understanding what the motion, the core motion, the core animation, the core movement is going to be. Then try to capture it first and then build around it.
Yeah, awesome. Even, I mean, I think, when you're saying taking things and actually like drawing them out and stuff, I know for me, especially when I was earlier on, like if I had a layout that I had to do, I would even do that to try and just visualize where all the boxes and everything would need to be, because that, just having to visualize and get everything there without the code can really, really be helpful.
And not only that, by the way, I actually had a talk a few months ago in London CSS that I talk about getting creative with keyframes, and I try to explain how to really understand the movement and how to visualize it in with a pen and paper. And when I do have very weird animations, very weird acting elements, like a bouncing ball, but it bounced from one. I don't know, it bounced in a different way. So I actually try to paint it, and then I'm going to translate it to animation, to the keyframes. So yeah, it's just a pen and a paper is just, it's just a way to throw your ideas out there. And if you have a way of thinking, just going to make everything much easier.
Awesome. Let's go back to here. Evan asking, is Adobe worth it? It depends on what you need it for, I think is what it comes down
I don't
to.
know. I don't know.
Yeah. Donkey Hopper is asking, got that on the screen. The details summary tag of an HTML is very weird and choppy when animated. Any alternatives or better ways to animate this tag?
When you animate, what part of it? I'm guessing the width, the height.
I'm guessing they mean. Let's just throw one on here. Details summary, and I haven't used one of these in a while. Is it details here and then the summary is the body, and then you get the drop down, which there we go. So yeah. This is the other way around, but then we get it dropping down and you see this. So the summary is like the title. This is the title, and then you have more information here, right? Let's just do lorem 50. I have a feeling, maybe I'm wrong, and let's just 1 second. Body font size 2 rem so we can see it, and margin 2 rem. For anyone who doesn't know, it's sort of like a toggle drop down. So I'm guessing they want to animate that part coming in, would be my guess.
Yeah. So I don't know how you actually animate this specific part, because it's I don't know what maybe it's something that need more further investigation. But you can actually recreate this this type of animation with just a little bit of JavaScript. Just add on click and add the class, and add 2 classes, one with height 0 and one with height of specific height, and animate between them. But again, when you animate the height, obviously the problem, and this is the problem with details and summary, that all of you're actually creating a reflow, so everything beneath it also is being reflowed. So maybe when if you are creating this element with JavaScript, maybe use just like a pop-up, or maybe use like a transform or something that would be much faster. Again, it really depends on what is the exact use case that you need, and I don't have like a quick answer of how to transition it better. I don't know if you can do it, because because when you
Jay said you
transition,
can
you
use a
do.
transition. Oh, here he has an example. Let's open that up and see. Oh well, Jay, this is
here.
where you're showing off now, though.
Yeah, it's Jay.
And that's using the details summary right there.
Yeah, but what's
being
what property
transitioned?
do you animate?
Chest panel, before, after. They don't have a class. No, they don't have a class. Detail summary, transition, transform, and they're doing a translate 3D.
Yeah, but I'm not sure. No, but if you go back to your example, if you want to transition the summary itself, the details itself, so I'm not sure you can use transition transform, because you need to transition the height or something like that. No, am I? But yeah, you can use
and you have the opened attribute on the details. Yeah, because when it's opened, if you look in here, we can see it gets the open attribute when it's open. Whoops.
Yeah, but again, what type of attributes of property do you need to animate? Yeah. Transition the scale with a scoped custom. With a scoped custom property.
Transition. Yeah. Oh, okay, that could work. But then so
there's nothing native that you can
so
say.
you're
just
sort of
say transition
you're saying
height or something.
Yeah. So you'd be giving the summary, not the summary. You're giving like the whole thing. You're controlling that. You have to sort of set the CSS between the open. You create your open and closed states, and then you're transitioning whatever property you choose. So there, I guess it comes back down a little bit, like when we were talking earlier about doing like from display block to display none. We can't do that. You have to find another solution to be able to attack that and find something that has good performance. And it could be, it's a little bit donkey hopper. Like here, when I'm clicking this, it's causing the rest of the page to reflow, because when I open it, it's pushing the rest of the content down. So is there a way you could do that and animate something coming in that isn't causing the entire page to reflow?
Well, yeah, I think you can actually position the summary, the details. Absolutely, but as Jay said, you can actually once you have the open and close state in your CSS, you can animate anything you want. You can animate the height, you can animate the font size, you can animate a clip path, you can animate anything you want to create that effect. Just again, remember that you are animating, you are creating a reflow once it opens. And this is cool.
Is that, Jay, the same? Did you use this Peter Griffin meme? Is it something similar you did there, or was that something different? I'm trying to remember.
No, he did it with
that was container queries, maybe.
Yeah, container queries. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. All right. We're getting through lots. Why use GSAP? I'm not the best to answer.
Why not using GSAP?
You're not. No, I think it's just in general. What is GSAP, and what would you use GSAP for?
GSAP is a GS library that help you animate or actually control anything you want. You can use it. Actually, maybe Jay can explain better. But no, it is a very, very powerful tool for animation. You can specifically if you're using like SVGs, it builds. It actually builds for using SVG. Not just GreenSock. It's here for a very long time. I know GreenSock from my time that I worked with Flash. It's from back there. But it's an amazing tool that you can use JavaScript to animate anything you want, and they have a lot of things like build inside of their engine that deals with performance and deal with accessibility and everything else. So it is an amazing tool. If you are dealing with animations and you want to use JavaScript, GreenSock is a great tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those, like, when you start using it, I haven't gone super deep with it. I've sort of just experimented with it, and it's always like, oh, that's really cool, that's clever, that's easy. And to do some of the stuff with it, it's pretty cool. And even with the flip animations they have now and stuff, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, everything from scrolling animation, flip animation, everything. Yeah, they're great.
Oh, there you go. Jay saying you can animate any number. It's not just DOM and CSS properties, plugins, utilities, etc. A lot of performance things under the hood. Great for Canvas, 3JS, custom easing, and more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, specifically, as I said, like if you're working even with Canvas, anything you want, because eventually there are just animating values. So there is a lot of things that you can use these values built in, or just use the values themselves and do anything you want with them. Yeah, great library.
And last question: why can't you animate from auto?
Because it's you know, it is just exactly like we said earlier from the display, because auto is just, it's not a value.
Exactly,
it's just it's different thing. You shouldn't think of it like, should I animate? Can I animate from zero to auto? Because auto means that it has an height or width, or height in this case, that is considered by something else and not by a number that I set. So by setting height to auto, you actually saying that I'm not setting the height. So it's, you can't really animating and from I want to set the height to I don't want to set the height. So it's like two different approaches that you can animate between them.
Yeah, and like the browser doesn't know what the auto height is until it gets there, right? Like it's only determined once they're there, and so it's sort of an unknown value that's figured out. Yeah. And actually, Jay's saying that's where GSAP can come in, because that's even with like the flip animations and stuff, right? Where it sort of does a bunch of stuff to figure those things out for you, and then you sort of reverse engineer the solution from there.
Because when you use JavaScript, you obviously can calculate the rendering size and everything else, and then you can animate it according to the to that rendering size.
Yeah, because it'll look at the final state, figure out all those numbers, and then you can circle back and put it to the beginning state. It's cool what you can do with there. Yeah.
As I said, there is a lot of reason using GSAP. I'm not saying no. And as for 3JS, 3JS is just a library for creating 3D elements using on Canvas using JavaScript. Amazing library with a huge community. So again, wonderful thing that you can create on it. One thing that I actually heard recently from I can't remember who it was. Never mind. That 3JS doesn't have a physics engine built in. It just, you create 3D elements, but you don't have 3D physics. So there is actually a kind of subversion of 3JS that a couple of people took, and they added 3JS with this physics library. I don't remember what its name, but yeah, it's you can create amazing things with 3JS. Obviously, anything you want. Things like that, for example. And you could create it, by the way, with JavaScript, with CSS, but no.
Yeah, I remember when this first made the rounds. It's pretty cool. This is somebody's portfolio, Bruno Simon's portfolio. So you can it's very interactive. You drive around. I put the link in the chat if you do want to waste your day just driving around a portfolio. But yeah, that's the type of things you can do with 3JS. And I see Jay saying you can use Canon.
As you can see, by the way, here there is actually, just as I said, there's two engines, not just the 3JS, because there's also a physics engine, because something is stopping the car and something is making the car go, and if you hit the cubes move. So there is another library. Normally when you use JavaScript, So normally when you use a library like this one, you also use a library that uses physics. But as I said, now I know that some people are trying to create one library that deals with both.
You're mentioning
Canon.js. Thank you. Thank you, Jay. Canon.js.
physics engine written in JavaScript for your browser-based games. There you go. So for anyone who wants to experiment in this world of things. And a question about Web Dev Journey's asking, they have a good computer and some of these examples are causing a lot of lag. Why is that?
Well,
I guess it depends on which ones they are, but I think it's just, it depends on, you know, what's actually getting passed, depending on the ones you're talking about. But
yeah, but you said you have a good computer. But I'm asking, what is a good computer? Because good computers are obviously varies, and if you have a good I don't know, you do need a good a GPU. That's the eventually. So I have a couple of GTX 1080s on my computer, and I don't have any lag ever. But I also have a very strong CPU and a strong motherboard and so on. So again, I don't know what is your computer doing. But for example, on my laptop, I do have a very old laptop, and yeah, when I run things on my laptop, I do get a lot of lags sometimes.
Yeah. Let's see. I think we're almost out of questions. We've made it through the board. If anybody else does have questions, feel free to drop them in. I'll clear the question board out, and we'll go back to over here for now.
It's been 2 hours.
It's
man.
been 2 hours. Yeah,
Time fly by.
We've been talking about this for a while now, and it's been a lot of fun. It's crazy how fast time can go when you're talking about things that we enjoy.
Yeah, I remember when I did a talk about conic gradient, and I said I'm going to need about 25-30 minutes, and the guy that ran the meetup, he said like 25 minutes to talk about conic gradient. Like, what do you have to talk 25 minutes about conic gradient? And I said, like, give me 2 hours to talk about conic gradients. And I have so much to do. And so after the lecture, he was like, "Oh my god, you went in so deep." Like, yeah, that's why I'm here. Yeah, so yeah, if you just give me the platform to talk about CSS, I'm here.
And that's why you need to stream. You share all of these things with everybody. We're going to keep bugging you until it happens.
Be on mind will keep bugging me on it. It's okay.
But yeah, there's no more questions coming in. So one before we go, I will promote your talk on smashing once again. So I just dropped the link in the chat. So if you missed it, Amit's having a talk on 3D CSS called "Pushing CSS to the Limit," and it's coming up. When is it? May, end of June, end of May, beginning of June.
Yeah.
Multi-day workshop over there. So the link is in the chat if you want to explore it and sort of dive a little bit deeper into the world of 3D CSS and all of that. And so that should be it should be really good. Is there anything else that you're up to these days that you want to let everyone know about?
Well, it is busy times. I'm doing a lot of conferences, a lot of meetups, a lot of talks, preparing to the workshop. Other than that, I don't know, nothing in particular. I'm doing a conference in Canada right next to you in 2 days. I was actually supposed to be in Canada right now. Yeah. We already talked about meeting for a beer, but then it went online. Sadly, yeah, but I don't know. Maybe one day, soon. I hope after this whole thing blows over. I don't know, but yeah. So I'm doing a lot of conferences, a lot of talks, and that's it.
Nice. Awesome. And yeah, thanks for coming on and spending so much time answering all of our questions.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for the questions, chat. Thank you. Yeah.
And B1 sharing Ben's channel to when you're going to be on there on.
I'm going to be there on the 15th, I believe.
I'm guessing that's March and not February. He put February 15th. I'm guessing it's March 15th.
Yeah, February 15th, I was on Front End Horse.
You're making the tour. You're a popular guy.
I'm trying to. I don't know.
That's awesome. And so there you're going to be looking at finding CSS solutions to JS problems. Is that what it was?
Yeah, that's a general idea. I think that Ben also had like a link that described this entire thing in detail. But yeah, the general idea is just as I said, coming from real life problems that I saw that happens to JS developers. That I said, wait, you can actually solve it much easier if you just let CSS do it. So we're going to see some examples and some work methods and best practices of how to use these methods. That's
awesome.
it.
Cool. And if anyone did jump in later or you want to revisit things, the replay of this will stay here, and I'll also be putting it over on YouTube probably later this week if all goes well. As far as me, I might maybe like 50% chance tomorrow afternoon be doing a stream, but I'm not sure yet. It depends if I can get everything else I need to get done. But yeah, so I might be, if not next Monday, like usual, be here. And just to see what's happening in the chat, a few people saying thank you for everything, and can't wait to the next stream. And yeah, awesome. There's been we did get a question, is it a virtual workshop? Yes, it will be a virtual workshop. I think Smashing is always virtual, right? Or no, they do.
Smashing,
they used to
do it, but now it's all virtual. You do get all the slides and all the videos and everything, and there's a lot of time for Q&A, and it's divided 4 days, but it's 2 in 1 week, 2 in the other week. So there's a lot of time in between that there's like a project to do on that week, and you can obviously contact me during that week. And
nice.
Everything is all thought out. They did pay a lot of attention to details, the guys in Smashing.
Cool. So that would be good. And yeah, thanks everybody for coming and hanging out. It's been a blast. And thanks.
Thank you, Kevin.
Everything.
And thank you.
Yeah, see you all guys next time. I see a bunch of chat coming in, but it's just everybody saying bye. So yeah, thank you all for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.